The massive observation deck buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from across the galaxy prepared for what they called the trial of endurance. This wasn't just any survival exercise. This was the Omega-7 Hell simulation, a digital nightmare. So realistic that participants often forgot they were in a simulation at all. The psychological scars were real. The trauma was real. And sometimes the casualties were real too. Vexter's gaze swept across the preparation area below, where the galaxy's most formidable warriors made their final preparations. The sight should have filled him with confidence. Instead, a cold dread settled in his stomach like a stone. The Thrakari warriors dominated one corner of the staging area, their 8-foot frames covered in natural armor plating that had evolved over millions of years on their volcanic homeworld. These beings were born in lava flows and raised in combat. They feared nothing, yet here they were, performing their ancient ritual combat prayers with an intensity that betrayed their deep concern. Their leader, a scarred veteran named Korthak, had survived 17 different death worlds. Even he looked nervous. Nearby, the crystalline Zephyrians clustered together in geometric formations, their translucent bodies refracting the red warning lights into rainbow patterns. Their energy shields hummed with power as they ran diagnostic after diagnostic, their crystal appendages trembling with anticipation. These beings could manipulate pure energy with their thoughts, had conquered 3 star systems through sheer force of will. Yet their leader kept rechecking his equipment with the desperation of someone who knew they were about to face something beyond their comprehension. The most unsettling sight was the Corvin Berserkers. These were beings who literally fed on violence, who grew stronger with each battle they fought. They had never known fear because they had never encountered anything stronger than their own rage. Their homeworld was a place where the weak died, before their first breath, where only the most savage survived to reproduce. They should have been eager for this challenge. Instead, they stood in perfect formation, checking and rechecking their weapons with a methodical precision that spoke of genuine concern. Every species present had earned their place here through blood, sweat, and survival instinct honed over countless generations. The insectoid Vrathihai, with their razor-sharp mandibles. The gaseous Nethver, who could phase through solid matter. The cybernetic Zixtal, who had replaced their biological weaknesses with mechanical perfection. All of them preparing for what they knew would be the greatest test of their lives. But wait. What was that commotion near the supply containers? 3 humans lounged against the military-grade storage units with the casual indifference of people, waiting for public transportation. The female Jessica was actually yawning. Not the fake yawn of someone trying to appear calm, but the genuine bone-deep yawn of someone who is genuinely bored. Her companions, Marcus and Tyler, were engaged in what appeared to be a heated debate about something called baseball statistics, with the kind of passionate intensity that most species reserve for matters of life and death. I'm telling you, Martinez's batting average in the clutch was better than Rodriguez's, Marcus insisted, gesturing wildly with his hands. The numbers don't lie. Numbers don't tell the whole story, Tyler shot back. Rodriguez had better plate discipline under pressure. You can't just look at batting average. Commander Vextar felt his blood run cold, here in the staging area, for the most dangerous survival trial in galactic history. These humans were arguing about recreational statistics from their homeworld. It was like watching someone discuss the weather while standing in front of an active volcano. The other species had begun to notice too. Whispered conversations rippled through the preparation area as warriors, who had never known fear, began to eye the humans with something approaching terror. What kind of beings could remain so calm in the face of the Omega-7 simulation? What kind of death world could produce creatures so utterly divorced from the concept of danger? Attention all participants. Vextar's voice boomed through the facilities, speakers cutting through the nervous chatter like a blade. The artificial gravity seemed to intensify as his words echoed off the reinforced walls. You will be dropped into the Omega-7 Hell simulation in exactly 10 minutes. This environment has been designed to test the absolute limits of survival capability among the galaxy's most hardy species. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority as he continued. Average survival time for participants is 48 standard hours. The current record holder, a Corvin berserker named Thaxel, the unkillable, lasted 127 hours before suffering complete psychological breakdown. This environment has claimed the lives of over 200 participants in the past decade. Despite our best safety protocols, the silence that followed was deafening. Even the Corvin berserkers, who normally responded to such announcements with battle cries, stood in hushed reverence for the challenge ahead. That's when Jessica raised her hand. The gesture was so casual, so utterly human, that it sent a ripple of confusion through the assembled warriors. She raised her hand like a student in a classroom, with the same energy someone might use to ask about bathroom breaks during a boring lecture. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the sudden silence. "When you say survival, do you mean like actual survival? Or just ... hanging out?" The question hit the observation deck like a physical blow. Several species began backing away from the humans instinctively, their survival instincts screaming warnings about predators that showed no fear. The Thrakkery warriors stopped their prayers mid-chant. Zephyrian's energy shields flickered with shock. Even the emotionless Zixthiels seemed to pause in their calculations. "What kind of death world spawned these creatures?" whispered Korthek to his battle brother, his voice barely audible through his helmet's speakers. The answer would terrify them all, because Earth wasn't just any death world. It was something far, far worse. Ready to discover what happens when these unsuspecting humans face the galaxy's deadliest trial? The universe is about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't the environment itself, but the beings who call the impossible home. And just like the power of compounding transforms small investments into massive wealth over time, these humans are about to show how their seemingly casual attitude compounds into something that will shake the very foundations of galactic civilization. The transport pods hissed open like coffins, revealing their occupants to damnation itself. In an instant, the sterile safety of the Galactic Survival Academy vanished, replaced by something that could only be described as hell made manifest. The Omega-7 simulation didn't just appear around the participants, it erupted into existence. With the violent fury of a universe gone mad, molten rivers carved through jagged obsidian landscapes like veins of liquid fire, their surfaces bubbling and spitting with temperatures that could melt reinforced starship hulls. The air itself was a weapon, thick with caustic vapors that burned the lungs and corroded exposed skin. Overhead, a crimson sky pulsed with unnatural storms that rained acid instead of water, each droplet capable of eating through standard military armor in seconds. The temperature wasn't just hot, it was psychotic. One moment, the environment registered at nearly 200 degrees Celsius, hot enough to boil blood in unprotected veins. The next, it plunged to -50, cold enough to freeze bone marrow solid. The shifts happened without warning, without pattern, as if the very laws of physics had been twisted into something malevolent and unpredictable. But the environment was just the opening act. The real stars of this nightmare were the predators. These weren't ordinary creatures. They were engineered nightmares, biomechanical horrors designed by the galaxy's most twisted minds to kill with maximum efficiency. Shadow stalkers that moved like liquid darkness, their forms shifting between solid and ethereal as they hunted. Razor-winged screamers that dove from the toxic clouds above, their cries alone capable of shattering mental defenses. And the apex predators massive, armored behemoths whose claws could shred starship hulls like paper and whose acidic saliva could dissolve titanium in seconds. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. 3 species had suffered complete mental breakdowns. The sound of emergency extraction beacons filled the air like digital screams for mercy. The crimson warning lights bathed the Galactic Survival Academy in an ominous glow as Commander Vexstar's 4 eyes fixed on the holographic display before him. His scaled hands trembled slightly as he reviewed the participant roster for what many considered the most dangerous trial in known space. 23 species, all volunteers, all about to face something that would either forge them into legends or break them completely. The mighty Thrakkery warriors, who had conquered volcanic worlds and bathed in lava flows, found themselves overwhelmed by an environment that exceeded even their considerable tolerances. Their leader, Korthak, the Unbreakable, activated his emergency beacon with tears streaming down his armored face. "This isn't survival," he gasped into his communicator. "This is torture." The crystalline Zephyrians, masters of energy manipulation, watched in horror as their shields failed under the environmental assault. Their carefully constructed energy matrices collapsed like houses of cards in a hurricane. One by one, their translucent forms flickered and disappeared as they chose extraction over certain death. Even the legendary Corvin Berserkers, beings who fed on violence and grew stronger with each battle, found themselves retreating for the first time in their species' recorded history. The environment was so hostile that their rage-fueled biology couldn't adapt fast enough. Their berserker fury, their greatest weapon, was useless against an enemy that couldn't be fought with tooth and claw. Within 30 minutes, half the participants had activated their emergency extraction beacons. The observation deck filled with the sounds of medical teams rushing to treat psychological trauma and environmental exposure. Species that had never known defeat were being carried away on stretchers, their minds shattered by an experience that defied every survival instinct evolution had given them. But wait, what was that smell? Smoke? Not the acrid smoke of burning flesh or melting equipment, but something else. Something familiar. Something that smelled suspiciously like barbecue. The humans were building a campfire. Not just any campfire, but a proper camping setup complete with what appeared to be a makeshift grill constructed from debris and volcanic rock. Marcus had somehow collected a pile of the highly volatile mineral deposits that were scattered throughout the environment, materials so unstable that they were literally used as starship fuel and was arranging them like charcoal briquettes. "This reminds me of that summer I worked the oil rigs in North Dakota," Marcus said conversationally, his voice carrying the casual tone of someone discussing weekend plans. He wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, completely unbothered by the fact that the temperature just spiked to levels that should have killed him instantly. Same kind of heat, same kind of smell, though the humidity's better. Here, Tyler, meanwhile, had noticed something that made every observer's blood run cold. One of the apex predators, a creature designated as an extinctional-level threat, whose claws could shred starship hulls, and whose mere presence had sent 3 species into psychological collapse, stalking through the molten landscape directly toward the humans. Any sane being would have run. Any survivor would have activated their emergency beacon. Any creature with functioning survival instincts would have at least shown some sign of concern. Tyler crouched down and began studying the creature's tracks. Like a hunter examining deer sign, "Think that big guy's edible?" he asked his companions. Pointing at the approaching nightmare, "Looks like it's got good meat on it. Probably tastes like chicken." The predator, a biomechanical horror that stood 12 feet tall and weighed several tons, paused in its approach. For the first time in its engineered existence, it seemed confused. Its targeting systems, designed to lock onto fear pheromones and stress hormones, couldn't find a target. These strange bipedal creatures weren't just unafraid, they were completely calm. But Jessica took the prize for the most disturbing display of casual indifference to mortal danger. As the caustic rain began falling around them, each droplet capable of eating through military-grade armor, she simply held out her hand to catch some of the liquid. Then, in a moment that would be replayed in psychiatric training videos for decades to come, she stuck her finger in the acid rain and tasted it. "Needs salt," she concluded with the thoughtful expression of someone sampling soup from the observation deck. Dr. Thymel, the Academy's chief psychologist and an expert in survival psychology across 47 different species, watched in absolute horror. Her forearms shook as she gripped the railing, her compound eyes wide with disbelief. She had studied the psychological profiles of every species in the galaxy. She had written the definitive texts on survival instinct and self-preservation. Nothing in her decades of research had prepared her for this. "They're not just surviving," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the alarms and emergency broadcasts filling the observation deck. They're enjoying this." The implications hit her like a physical blow. These humans weren't adapting to the environment. They weren't overcoming their fear. They weren't even showing signs of stress. They were treating the galaxy's most dangerous survival simulation like a weekend camping trip, but the real terror was just beginning. Because if these beings could treat the Omega-7 simulation as a casual outing, what did that say about the world that had created them? What kind of death world could produce creatures so utterly divorced from the concept of danger that they would taste acid rain and hunt apex predators for dinner? The answer would shake the very foundations of galactic civilization and force every species to confront a terrifying truth. Sometimes the most dangerous predator isn't the one that roars the loudest, but the one that approaches danger with a smile, just like compound interest grows silently in the background until it becomes an unstoppable force. These humans were about to demonstrate how their casual attitude toward danger would compound into something that would redefine what it meant to be apex predators in a galaxy full of nightmares. The fourth day of the Omega-7 simulation broke every rule in the Galactic Survival Handbook. What had started as the most dangerous trial in known space had transformed into something that defied every scientific principle, every evolutionary theory, and every assumption about the nature of survival itself. The humans weren't just surviving, they were rewriting the laws of predator and prey in real time. Commander Vexstar stood frozen before the main observation screen, his four eyes wide with disbelief as the impossible unfolded before him. The simulation's AI had begun sending frantic error reports, its processors struggling to comprehend data that contradicted every parameter in its programming. The ecosystem, designed to be a perfect killing machine, was doing something it had never done before. It was adapting to serve the humans rather than destroy them. Tyler had achieved what xenobiologists had declared impossible. 3 apex predators creatures that had been engineered to be the perfect killing machines now followed him around like devoted pets. These weren't just any predators. These were extinction-level threats, biomechanical nightmares whose mere presence had caused entire species to flee in terror just days before. The largest of the 3, a 12-foot-tall armored behemoth whose claws could shred starship hulls, had been designated Target Alpha in the Academy's threat assessment files. Its acidic saliva could dissolve titanium in seconds. Its hunting instincts had been programmed by the galaxy's most brilliant military minds to seek and destroy without mercy or hesitation. Tyler had named it Princess. "Good girl, Princess," he cooed, scratching behind the creature's armored head, ridge where sensor arrays had detected a cluster of nerve endings. The beast, whose roar alone had previously sent 3 species into psychological collapse, made a sound that could only be described as purring. A 12-foot-tall, multi-ton killing machine was purring like a satisfied house cat. But that wasn't the most disturbing part. Princess rolled over onto her back, exposing her armored belly in a gesture of complete submission and trust. Tyler obliged with belly rubs, his hands moving confidently over scales that could deflect military-grade plasma weapons. Ow. The creature's eyes, designed to strike fear into the hearts of apex predators, closed in blissful contentment. "How is this possible?" whispered Dr. Thymel, the Academy's chief psychologist, her voice barely audible above the chaos in the observation deck. "Those creatures were programmed to kill. They don't have the neural pathways for domestication, shouldn't be capable of forming bonds." Rex and Brutus, the other 2 apex predators in Tyler's growing pack, demoen STRATED hunting techniques that had never been recorded in any scientific database. They worked together in perfect coordination, communicating through subsonic frequencies that somehow Tyler had learned to understand and respond to. When he pointed at a section of the molten landscape, they would investigate it thoroughly and report back with information that proved startlingly accurate. But Tyler's achievement was just the beginning of the madness. Marcus had transformed a section of the toxic hellscape into something that resembled a 5-star outdoor kitchen. The toxic atmosphere, which had been designed to corrode organic tissue on contact, had become his secret ingredient. He had discovered that certain native plants could process the caustic vapors, neutralizing their lethal properties while concentrating their flavor compounds into what he enthusiastically described as the best barbecue sauce I've ever tasted. The secret is in the fermentation process. Marcus explained to his bewildered companions while tending to a rack of what appeared to be roasted predator meat. These little purple fungi here, they love the sulfur compounds in the atmosphere. Give them a few hours to work their magic, and you've got a marinade that would make Gordon Ramsay weep with joy.
Outdoor kitchen operation,
He had established, would have impressed professional chefs on the most advanced civilized worlds. He had constructed smokers from volcanic rock, grills from salvaged metals, and storage areas that maintained perfect temperature control using nothing but the environment's natural thermal fluctuations. The aroma that drifted from his cooking area was so appealing that even the observation deck's ventilation systems couldn't completely filter it out. "I'm getting hungry just watching this," admitted Lieutenant Zorthok, a Thurakari warrior who had survived 17 different death worlds. "And I'm a silicon-based life form. I shouldn't even be able to detect organic food scents." But the most terrifying development was Jessica's exploration of the deeper caverns. These weren't just any caverns. They were areas marked as certain. Death on Academy maps, regions where the simulation's designers had placed their most dangerous secrets. The thermal readings from those depths registered temperatures that should have instantly vaporized any organic matter. The pressure readings indicated crushing forces that could flatten starship hulls. The atmospheric composition showed concentrations of toxic gases that could kill entire space stations. Jessica had spent 6 hours down there and emerged looking like she had just finished a pleasant hike. She was covered head to toe in bioluminescent blood from creatures that weren't supposed to exist, entities, so dangerous that they had been classified as theoretical threats. Mathematical possibilities that the simulation's designers had included as Easter eggs for the truly suicidal. The blood glowed with an eerie blue-green light that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, creating patterns that seemed to move with a life of their own. "Found the source of the volcanic activity," she reported cheerfully, wiping the glowing blood from her face with the casual gesture of someone cleaning off garden dirt. "Turns out it's not volcanic at all. There's this massive underground ecosystem down there. Really pretty, actually. Kind of like Mammoth Cave back home, but with more things trying to eat you." The observation deck fell silent except for the sound of equipment malfunctioning and several species hyperventilating. Jessica had just described a journey into the simulation's deepest layer, a region that existed primarily as a theoretical construct, a place where the designers had unleashed their most twisted imaginations. "She's talking about the Abyss Protocol," stammered Dr. Velteron, the Academy's chief xenobiologist. "It's not supposed to be accessible to participants. It's a theoretical environment designed to test the limits of our simulation technology. The creatures down there aren't even fully programmed. They're AI constructs that evolve in real time."
Ow.
But Jessica wasn't finished with her report. She pulled out what appeared to be a collection of crystalline structures, each one pulsing with the same bioluminescent light that covered her body. These little guys were everywhere down there. Really friendly once you get to know them. They're like living crystals, but they think and communicate through light patterns. "I think they're trying to tell us something important." The crystals in her hands began pulsing in synchronized patterns, creating a light show that was both beautiful and deeply unsettling. Each pulse seemed to contain information, complex data streams that the Academy's computers struggled to interpret. The observation deck erupted in chaos. 5 Academy instructors submitted immediate transfer requests. Several species representatives demanded emergency council sessions. And the Galactic Safety Council initiated emergency protocols that hadn't been used in over a century, but the humans were just getting started. Because what the terrified observers didn't yet understand was that these 3 individuals weren't just surviving in an impossible environment. They were beginning to unlock its secrets, to form relationships with its inhabitants, and to discover truths that would fundamentally change how the galaxy understood the nature of life itself. The question that haunted every observer was no longer whether the humans would survive. The question was what they would become by the time this was over, and whether the galaxy was ready for the answers they were about to uncover. Just like compound interest transforms small investments into massive wealth over time, these humans were about to demonstrate how their unique approach to impossible challenges would compound into revelations that would reshape the very foundations of galactic civilization. The crimson emergency lights that had been flashing for days suddenly seemed inadequate. Commander Vextar's hands shook as he activated the highest level protocols the Galactic Survival Academy had ever implemented. Code Omega. Reality breach. The impossible had become undeniable, and the footage from Day 7 would be classified at levels so secret that even the Galactic Council's inner circle would be denied access for the next 3 centuries. What the humans had accomplished defied every law of physics, biology, and basic survival that had governed galactic civilization for millennia. They hadn't just survived the unsurvivable, they had transformed it into something that challenged the very foundations of what it meant to be alive in a hostile universe. Marcus had achieved what evolutionary biologists had declared impossible across 47 different star systems: the underground ecosystem. A carefully balanced network of predator and prey relationships that had existed in perfect, lethal harmony for millions of years had been convinced to migrate upward. Not forced, not tricked, convinced. It's all about understanding the food chain. Marcus explained to a group of horrified xenobiologists who had gathered around his latest creation. These little guys down there, they've been stuck in the same routine for eons. Same hunting patterns, same territorial disputes, same endless cycle of kill or be killed. They were bored out of their minds. The creatures that followed him too. The surface told a story that rewrote textbooks across the galaxy. Ancient predators whose species had been locked in mortal combat for millennia now moved together in coordinated hunting parties. Prey animals that should have fled in terror from their natural enemies were instead forming symbiotic relationships that benefited both species. See that big red one there? Marcus pointed to a creature that resembled a cross between a dragon. In a tank, its scales gleaming like liquid metal. It's actually a herbivore. It's been pretending to be a carnivore for so long that everyone forgot. And those little blue guys riding on its back, they're not parasites. They're the real hunters. They've been using the red one as mobile camouflage for centuries. The implications were staggering. The simulation's designers had created what they thought was a perfect ecosystem of death. But they had unknowingly recreated relationships that had existed in the galaxy's distant past, for war and evolution had driven species apart. Marcus had somehow recognized these ancient patterns and helped the creatures remember what they had once been. But Marcus's achievement paled in comparison to what Tyler had accomplished. The resort he had constructed wasn't just a shelter. It was a thriving recreational complex designed specifically for the predators that had originally been programmed to kill everything in sight. The sight of it would have been comical if it weren't so terrifying. The big ones like to play fetch, Tyler explained to Dr. Thymel, whose forearms were trembling as she took notes. You just got to use the right kind of ball. See, they're not really killing machines, they're bored. Same routine every day, same hunting patterns, same targets. They needed enrichment. The fetch game involved titanium spheres the size of small vehicles being hurled across molten landscapes by creatures whose claws could shred starship hulls. The predators would chase after these projectiles with the enthusiasm of puppies, their massive forms bounding through lava flows like they were splashing through puddles. And the little ones are great at hide-and-seek, Tyler continued, gesturing to a group of smaller predators that were playing what appeared to be an elaborate game of cosmic tag. You just got to know how to talk to them. Most species make the mistake of trying to communicate through fear or dominance, but these guys respond to play. They're basically cosmic teenagers who've been stuck in detention for 1,000,000 years. The recreational facilities Tyler had built included obstacle courses, swimming areas carved into the molten rock, and what appeared to be a primitive sports arena where different species of predators engaged in games that resembled everything from soccer to wrestling. The sight of extinction-level threats, playing organized sports while their supposed prey cheered from the sidelines, was enough to drive several observers to request immediate psychiatric evaluation, but the revelation that would haunt the galaxies. Nightmares came from Jessica's latest expedition into the deep caverns. She had disappeared for 18 hours, taking with her equipment that shouldn't have been able to survive the crushing depths and impossible temperatures. When she emerged, she wasn't alone. "Found some friends," she announced with the casual enthusiasm of someone who had just discovered a new coffee shop. "They've been down there for about 1,000,000 years, really friendly once you get to know them. They just wanted someone to talk to." The beings that followed her into the light were unlike anything in the galactic database. They moved like living shadows, their forms shifting between dimensions that the Academy's sensors couldn't properly track. Some appeared to be made of crystallized time itself, their bodies flickering between past and future states. Others seemed to exist as pure consciousness, their thoughts visible as streaming patterns of light that painted impossible geometries in the air. "These are the old ones," Jessica explained, scratching behind what might have been an ear on a creature that existed in 7 dimensions simultaneously. "They've been sleeping down there since before the first stars cooled. Turns out they're not cosmic horrors, they're just really, really old and incredibly lonely. They've been waiting for someone who could see them as more than just obstacles to overcome." The Ancient Ones, as Jessica called them, began demonstrating abilities that made the Academy's most advanced technology look like stone tools. They could manipulate matter at the quantum level, fold spacetime like origami, and communicate across vast distances through methods that transcended traditional physics. But they used these godlike powers to play games with Jessica, to show her wonders that existed beyond the reach of conventional science. "The whole universe is just a big playground." One of them communicated through patterns of light that somehow conveyed meaning directly into the observers' minds. "We've been waiting so long for someone who understood that. Your species sees challenge where we see invitation. You see danger where we see opportunity. You are the first to approach the impossible with joy rather than fear." That's when Senior Technician Cravel, his 6 hands flying over his control panel, discovered the truth that would change everything. The deep scans of Earth, the humans' homeworld, had finally processed through the Academy's most sophisticated analysis systems. The results were so shocking that he had to run them 17 times before he could accept their accuracy. "Sir," he reported to Commander Vexstar, his voice barely a whisper, "we've run deep scans on their homeworld. Earth isn't just a death world, it's classified as Extinction Class Omega, the highest rating in our system." Commander Vexstar's 4 eyes widened in disbelief. "That's impossible," he replied, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent centuries studying survival across the galaxy. No intelligent species could evolve on an Omega-class world. The environmental pressures alone would prevent the development of complex neural networks. It's a mathematical impossibility." "Sir." Cravel's voice cracked as he delivered the revelation that would haunt galactic civilization for millennia. "According to their cultural databases, they don't consider Earth dangerous. They call it home and describe it as a pretty decent place to raise kids." The implication hit the observation deck like a physical blow. If Earth was an extinction class Omega world, a planet so hostile that it could theoretically kill any known form of life, and humans considered it a pleasant place to raise children, then what did that make the humans themselves? The answer was becoming terrifyingly clear. The humans weren't just survivors. They weren't just adaptable. They were something entirely new in the galaxies. Evolutionary history. A species that had evolved beyond the concept of environmental threat. Beings for whom the impossible was simply Tuesday afternoon, just like compound interest. Transformed small investments into massive wealth over time. These humans had demonstrated how their unique perspective on danger and challenge would compound into revelations that would force every species in the galaxy to reconsider their most fundamental assumptions about life, survival, and what it truly meant to be apex predators in a universe full of wonders disguised as nightmares. The extraction pods descended through the transformed atmosphere of what had once been the galaxy's most feared survival simulation. But Commander Vexstar could barely recognize the hellscape that had traumatized countless warriors for decades. Where molten rivers of death had once carved through barren wastelands, now flourished gardens of impossible beauty. Where acid rain had fallen like tears from a weeping sky, now gentle mists nourished thriving ecosystems that shouldn't have been able to exist. Day 15 marked the end of the longest survival trial in galactic history, not because the participants had reached their breaking point, but because the Academy's staff had reached theirs. The humans weren't being extracted for their safety, they were being extracted because they had fundamentally altered the nature of reality itself within the simulation. And the psychological impact on the observers was approaching dangerous. Levels Jessica emerged from the extraction pod looking like a warrior queen from some ancient myth, her entire body covered in the friendly bioluminescent blood of creatures that had once been classified as extinction-level threats. The blood pulsed with soft blue-green light, creating patterns that seemed to tell stories of friendship and cooperation in languages that predated spoken word. She stretched casually, like someone getting out of a comfortable bed after a good night's sleep. "This was fun," she said during the mandatory debriefing, her voice carrying the satisfied tone of someone who had just finished a pleasant vacation. "Maybe next time we could try somewhere with actual weather." This was pretty mild. The temperature swings were interesting, but they were so predictable. Back home in Montana, you can get tornado warnings, blizzards, and 100-degree heat all in the same day. The debriefing room fell silent, except for the sound of several species hyperventilating. Dr. Thymel, the Academy's chief psychologist, made a note that would later be classified at the highest levels. Subject, Jessica. Displays complete absence of trauma response. Describes classic survival environment as mild and predictable. Recommends increased environmental hostility for future trials. Marcus had left behind something that would revolutionize galactic agriculture for centuries to come. His detailed agricultural notes, written in neat handwriting on sheets of metal he'd pounded flat using volcanic rock, contained cultivation techniques for plants that thrived in environments that should have killed them instantly. His cookbook, illustrated with cheerful drawings of various Deathworld delicacies, included recipes for preparing creatures that had never before been considered edible by any known species. "The secret to the acid spitter steaks," read one entry, "is in the marinade. The natural acids in their system actually make them self-tenderizing. Just add a little of that purple fungus for flavor, and you've got yourself a meal that would make any barbecue pitmaster jealous." Tyler's legacy was perhaps the most disturbing of all. He had trained an entire pack of apex predators in basic commands and left behind care instructions written with the patience of someone teaching a dog to sit. The instructions included feeding schedules, exercise routines, and even suggestions for birthday parties and holiday celebrations. "Rex responds well to positive reinforcement," one section read. "Princess likes her belly rubbed after meals. Brutus gets moody if he doesn't get enough playtime. Remember, they're not just killing machines, they're individuals with their own personalities and needs." But the transformation went deeper than individual achievements. The ecosystem itself had been fundamentally altered. Predator and prey relationships had been rewritten. Ancient species had rediscovered cooperation they had forgotten for millions of years. The very concept of survival had been replaced by something that looked suspiciously like community building. The Academy would never recover from what they had witnessed. Within a galactic standard year, emergency sessions of the Galactic Council had completely rewritten their classification systems. Omega-class worlds were hastily reclassified as Deathworlds and forbidden to all species except humans. A new classification Apocalypse class was created for worlds that were dangerous even by human standards. Though the Council privately hoped such worlds didn't actually exist, but the real changes happened in the classified files. In reports that would be sealed for centuries and shared only among the highest levels of galactic leadership, the final report, stamped with security classifications that hadn't been used since the last Galactic War, contained a single recommendation that would reshape interstellar policy forever. Under no circumstances should humans be informed of what we consider safe environments. The psychological damage to other species would be catastrophic. The reasoning was simple and terrifying. If humans considered an extinction class Omega world a pleasant place to raise children, then what would they think of the carefully controlled, perfectly safe environments that other species called home? The very concept of a safe world might be so alien to human psychology that learning about it could cause them to lose whatever survival instincts they still possessed. The humans, meanwhile, had already submitted their request for the next survival exercise. The application filed in triplicate with the casual efficiency of someone requesting vacation time contained a single line that would haunt Academy administrators for decades. Something with a bit more excitement this time. The request was denied immediately, permanently. But deep in the classified files, accessible only to the Galactic Council's emergency response teams, a new entry appeared in the Galactic Threat Database. The entry would be referenced in emergency protocols, diplomatic briefings, and military strategy sessions for centuries to come. Species, human, homeworld, Earth extinction class, Omega. Threat level, absolute. Recommendation, peaceful coexistence. Strongly advised. Under no circumstances should humans be informed of their threat classification. The final note, added by a traumatized Academy instructor whose name would be redacted from all records, would become legend among the galaxy's military and diplomatic circles. They don't understand danger because they are the danger. But perhaps. The most chilling addendum came from the Academy's AI systems, which had been monitoring and analyzing the humans' behavior throughout the trial. The AI's conclusion, delivered in the cold, logical language of pure artificial intelligence, contained a warning that would change how the galaxy viewed these strange beings from the third planet of an unremarkable star system. Humans do not overcome impossible challenges. They redefine impossibility itself. The truth was becoming clear to anyone willing to see it. The humans weren't just survivors or even apex predators. They were something entirely new in the galaxy's evolutionary history. A species that had evolved beyond the concept of environmental limitation. Beings for whom the impossible was simply another interesting problem to solve, just like compound interest transforms small investments into massive wealth over time. These humans had demonstrated how their unique approach to challenge and danger would compound into revelations that would force every species in the galaxy to reconsider their most fundamental assumptions about life, survival, and what it truly meant to thrive in a universe that seemed designed to kill everything in it. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same.